Welcome to the New Normal Podcast, 2020 edition, where information and conversation leads to revelation. I am your host, Kevin D. Bradley. Let's get into it. Transparency, Part 4. I left off talking about or explaining how families are harmed by the lack of transparency. Episode 1, well, no, not episode 1, but transparency part 1, 2, 3. I talked about briefly situations that happened to me, how I responded, and the process of my response and my healing. The reason why I took time off, and I'm back. Baby, I'm back. But more importantly, it's I believe it's by design that I have been chosen to endure certain hardships. I think it's by design. I believe so. One is because, God allowed it. Two, God would place the burden in my heart to share my experience and how I am overcoming and the healing, but also to expose the hurt, the pain, the situation, shed light or be transparent in this situation or in my situations. Transparency versus translucent, being translucent, and versus opaque. So you have 3 categories: to be transparent, to allow all light or most of the light in. Translucent allows some light. Opaque allows no light. So you have these 3 categories in which I feel moved to speak on my situations and the family dynamic that I have experienced, and why I, as a dad, operate in being transparent with my children. And as they grow older, more transparency will be warranted. Because after I'm gone, they will be left to do what God has placed in their path. And it's important for me, the legacy I leave behind, that they are prepared as much as possible with information, with love, with support, with care, with insight and instruction. Now, them following that is a whole different subject, because we have choices. We have choices, but for the most part, I'm gonna do all I can. It's in my heart to do all I can to raise my children the way God has ordained me and created me to be. So let's talk about generational curses and the root, identifying a crisis. Too often we experience, and let me speak about myself, that experience the consequence of the lack of parenting from the previous generation. Um, a lot of things I had to learn on the go. One, because of um, there was no communication in my home, only instructions. You didn't ask no questions. You couldn't ask no questions. And if you thought about asking questions, it was your tail, Mr. Postman. Or you get looked at crazy or made to feel shame for asking questions which are legitimate concerning you and just questions that you have. But I often found out that some families operate under the secrecy uh, umbrella, where them exposing or sharing a certain situation exposes another, and you know, maybe they didn't want to do that, or whatever the case may be, nothing was shared. So when it was time as an adult to enter into certain doors and experience certain things, you had no preparation, you had no advice, no instructions, you had no wisdom, just manipulation. And just to look at, no, I mentioned in the third episode why, you probably thinking, why would a mother say that to their son? And that's a great question. I don't know. I'm not a mother. So that's a question that she would have to answer. And based on my experience, that question is not getting answered. but it is what it is. So I have to move forward. So imagining having experienced what I experienced with my health and experienced what I experienced with, raising kids thus far, and not having a resource from my side to go to. And I can speak for my wife and her, but that's her business and her information to share. But for me, information, insight, transparency has been opaque, has been a solid wall, no light, no information, no guides. And it's unfortunate, it's sad that we as families, we as members of families, one, doesn't practice forgiveness as much as we uh, appear. It's always someone else's fault. And knowing that an individual has the information to release and set free some of the queries, the questions, the hurts, and the pains of a person either not being receptive, being accepted, received, rejected, abused. All this information that is stored up in the depths of our family lineage will remain buried because of pride, embarrassment, and fear. But in order for us, in order for me to be the light in which God has called me to be, first off, I must be transparent. I must allow the light to flow through me. The light of love, the light of information, the light of patience, the light of forgiveness, the light of fellowship, the light of gentleness. And it's easier said than done. So, when you are transparent, like I mentioned earlier, you are not just telling all your business just to be telling it, but being transparent is to share with a purpose, with a goal, especially upon being requested. Because there's healing in our confessions. And for those of you who know the Word of God, we are to confess our faults one towards another so that we might be healed. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man or woman, boy or girl, availeth much. So, it's important for us to confess and not conceal. That's all about being transparent. When we are translucent, lucid, oh, help us, Lord. When we are translucent, we don't keep. It's like we share a little bit, we keep a little bit. But the part that we keep is pertinent to the deliverance of who we need to share it with. Our egos get in the way, pride gets in the way, and we allow our selfish motives to become Lord and rule and king on what we decide to do and say and operate to bring healing towards others. And it's unfair. Not only is it unfair, it's a critical step in decapitating the legs of growth in the family dynamic. Here's what I do believe. There are times when certain things should be shared, and there's times that things need to be kept until the proper time. But there's also times when you have forgiven yourself, you have forgiven those who have hurt you, whether intentionally or unintentionally. You have forgiven them and you are healed, and you can give that same healing to those you are connected to. For those, when you look out and you see the mistakes that are being made, and instead of being vulnerable, having access to the very same pain in which you see your family members experiencing, instead of using that pain for purpose and really, I'm talking about really making a difference in the lives of the people you claim you love, oftentimes you end up being selfish and you end up being self-absorbent and keeping what could, in essence, set free and deliver a generation of youth, a generation of family. And I often wonder why, as family, we take the opaque role and not say anything. Ignore questions when they're being asked. Or just stay silent, won't even answer it, won't even acknowledge it. And that's the type of behavior that causes curses to continue to cycle through. It's that type of mindset that keeps families bound. But because of the grace of God, because of the mercy of God, He will send people in and into a family or into a group or into a marriage or into a relationship that will bring hope, change, and deliverance to the bloodline of that particular family, because God is faithful. But if we do not allow, or more importantly, become transparent, not only with ourselves, but with God, allowing Him to heal, touch, and deliver what is broken in our lives. As long as I have that birth certificate that is blank, there will always be a void there. But that void is not causing any setbacks to me moving forward, because I have received healing through confession, excuse me, acknowledgement, and awareness. I will continue this conversation in Transparency Part 5. There's more to share. Follow me. Follow me. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow the New Normal Podcast 2020 edition on all social media platforms.